Hello, welcome in to another edition of Chi Time, your conscious living show with me, Clara Apollo. And I'm here right now in deepest rural France. It's utterly beautiful. I can feel the energy of the winter leaving and the spring coming through. And you know what? I have for you a real treat. We're going to be looking at the Zodiac and all the richness within that with John Wadsworth. Now, he's from Glastonbury. In fact, we met each other not far from there. And he's got an MA in cultural astronomy and astrology and has been teaching this since the 1990s. He's got a school, the Kairos School of Astrology in Glastonbury, and he's also the founder of the Alchemical Journey, where he would take people on the walk around Glastonbury and we're going to ask him about all of that anyway, probably a lot of things to chat to him about. But anyway, he's a total pioneer as well. He loves his astro drama and theatre too, so I wonder if that's going to sort of creep into the discussion. But more importantly is John has got a brand new book out. Now this, Your Zodiac Soul, has got to be one of the most interesting books that I've read recently, that really speaks to me in various different ways. You know, it's so rich with information from myths, from astrology, from psychology, from practical applications. That actually what I've done is I've asked John to come back for 4 episodes of this, because there's just too much to do in one half-hour segment. So let's get him on the line and start off asking him about how he got into writing this book and the alchemical journey. And also let's look at some information about Aries, Taurus and Gemini. So without further ado, let's get John on the other line. Hi there, John. How are you doing?
Hi, Clara. Nice to see you.
Yeah, good. So how's it going with the book? This is really exciting stuff, isn't it, for you?
A very exciting moment. The book launches, my first book launches on Tuesday on the Spring Equinox.
Yeah.
Very specifically chosen because it's the beginning of the astrological year.
Yeah, exactly. Ooh, it feels so fortuitous that we're having this discussion now to sort of coordinate with all of that. Yeah. So if we look at, let's go back to the beginning. What got you inspired by astrology? Why are you so deeply immersed in this topic?
Okay, well, this is quite a big story. So it's one I'm very happy to tell. It was a very sort of life-changing moment in my life when I was 21. I didn't know anything about astrology. I'd never even read a star sign, sun sign column or anything. And I was down in Spain. I ran into this guy. We had this conversation. He looked me in the eye. He said, "You're an Aries." He identified my sign just like that, and it just sort of blew me away. It sort of I always say that it's turned a key in my soul somewhere, because he then handed me this book about what Aries are like. He had this little book with him. He said, "I'm an Aries as well, and this is what Aries are like." He hands me this little book and I start reading it, and it's like I'm reading my secret diary. It's like this is kind of, wow, this is who I am. But I'm not living my life that way. I knew this was who I was. So it was like a sort of an invitation to be myself, to find myself. And then I went outside and I had this extraordinary moment under the stars, and this understanding of astrology sort of started to pulse through my body and my being. It changed me. I went through a profound change of perspective. And I always say I became an astrologer in that moment, because after that, I knew that's what I was going to do with my life. It was one of those really dramatic moments. Yeah. So it was incredible.
Something you never forget that, do you? It's kind of really embedded in your soul. And looking up at the stars as well, because you studied astronomy too, haven't you?
Yeah, I studied astronomy as well. I've always been fascinated by the night sky, and it was this. I love lying under the stars. I've spent hours and hours and hours learning all the positions and learning the names of all the stars and being able to identify them. And I think the stars do convey information directly to us. And I think that's part of the power of astrology, is that if we spend enough time under a night sky, the stars do start to communicate with us in ways that it's hard to talk about, but you get a feeling for it, you know.
You do, and I'm over here in France at the moment, in the middle of nowhere, in a beautiful, beautiful place. Just a butterfly just came with the window. Hello, hello, springtime. But yeah, you can actually see the stars,
right,
in their magnificence. I mean, we even saw the Milky Way, which we're going to come to a bit with tourists. But you know, just being able to, as you say, commune with them, allow them to radiate down the information, and you're absorbing it somewhere. And it's making sense somewhere within you, isn't it? And look, I'm going to quote from your book, page 100 in John's book, Your Zodiac Soul. The zodiac is an ancient emblem of the soul. And this book is written to foster the capacity that you already have for that remembering of this stream of ancient wisdom that flows through you. And when I read that, I felt it. I felt it was like a recognition of something that was already present within me.
Right. I think that's in the Cancer chapter of the book, isn't it? I think it's talking about the idea of memory, of going back to the memory of that we actually carry this as a deep memory within us. Exactly. I sometimes talk about the zodiac as a memory theatre, full of characters, full of images, full of these beings that populate our imagination. And I think that's a very powerful idea, and something resonates, even if we haven't consciously studied astrology, if we don't have any sort of even awareness that we're particularly interested in astrology. There's something about these 12 signs, these 12 images, that speaks to something very deep in us that we draw out of the collective, you know, that's been in our culture for thousands of years, you know.
Yeah. So, what is the significance of the 12?
I mean, 12 is a very harmonious number. It's a very solar number, and it develops out of I mean, it seems as though the zodiac developed out of agriculture, right? When we started to become settled, we started to establish settled communities, and through those consistent observations of the passage of the sun through the year and how that corresponded with the seasonal cycles. So the images of the signs of the zodiac are derived out of seasonal images from Northern Hemisphere cultures. So Aries sort of means the spring equinox. It represents the spring, and all of its symbolism, its energy, its stories correspond with springtime, things that we observe in springtime. And you get the ram and the lamb associated in Christianity and Judaism with this time of the year. You get stories about rams and lambs. Similarly, Cancer gets associated with the summer solstice, Libra with the autumn equinox. Yeah. Virgo, the harvest, still very clearly the image of the harvest. You know, it's the harvest goddess. She is the harvest goddess in the sky, and it corresponds with that time of the year. So there's something about us being able to tune in and harmonize with the cycles of the seasons as a way of harmonizing with our own energy.
I agree. It's very linked with traditional Chinese medicine, was what I was getting as I was reading the book, you know, because it's a truth. It's the truth of nature, and that's running externally, but it's also running internally. And when we lose touch with that, that's when the problems really occur. And our society is pretty out of touch with nature these days. So to bring awareness in as many ways as you can, but I think that most people, probably people watching and listening, are interested in their horoscopes at least, or maybe they've even had their birth charts done, because of that innate curiosity of who am I really and what is my place in the world.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, and I think what I've done in the book and the way I've written it, the way I've paced it, is a continual reminder of the more organic pace of life. You know, astrology can, and you know, just thinking about life as a cycle rather than as a line, you know, where you're kind of born from nothing, you return to nothing. There's this line, you've got to do everything in this timeline. It's so pressured and stress inducing. And then a cycle, you start to remember that you're part of a cycle, and those cycles are common to all of the natural world. And there's a way that it helps us to relax. I think the zodiac, in a way, can help us to relax into a more natural pace, that we can absorb things as they come up in time, and we can tune into them and we can recognize where we are in that cycle. But it can take the stress out of this. I've got to do something with my life. I've got to achieve something. I've got to be successful. I've got to, get it right because I only got one chance. It's all of that stress-inducing information that this culture that we're currently in seems to feed us, and yet we know deep down that life is cyclical, and we evolve in spirals, which of course.
I'll go back to time in a minute, but it's bringing into trusting the seasons. Oh, cup of tea is here. Let's look at your mug. What have you got there?
Life is good. How's that?
Life is good. That's great. Oh, look, tea time. I've got a really nice rainbow mug here of me Hippocrates. Cheers. Get your tea out, peeps. What sort of tea have you got? I'm nosy.
It's a ginger tea.
Oh yeah, I've got ginger. Actually, ginger things in the bottom there, swimming around, and lemon and
ginger is the Aries.
It's the
Aries. Part of the Aries food. It's because it warms you. It heats you.
It does, doesn't it? Warms you up.
This time of year, because we're emerging out of the hibernation time and we're coming back to life again. And Aries is all about that, coming back to life. It's about igniting the fire in the soul.
Getting you going on your path. Well, you kind of, so it's, you're talking about the cyclical spiral of the seasons and the years. What about the ones in our days? Like I have this in the morning to wake me up in the morning. Do you think that when you wake up in the morning, you're kind of in a bit of an Aries mode of like, got to get up, got to get on with my day?
You can map the zodiac onto the day just as you can map it onto the year. So Aries represents the sunrise, just as Libra represents the sunset. When you're in that more reflective time of the day, as the sun's going down and the colours are spreading across the horizon. That's more of a reflective Libran experience. But the sun that wakes you up is that waking up of your fire, of your life. You get out of bed, you've got to, I go and have a cold shower every morning to wake me up.
Hardcore.
But it's like, that's that thing that we need to kind of give us that motivation.
Oof, absolutely, that ignition. That's what I was getting from reading this as well, it being a fire sign too. But before we really dive into the actual signs, let's go back to this topic of time, because your school is called the Kairos School of Astrology, and very much running through all this is the difference between Kairos and Chronos, the linear time and the spiral time. And I bet you'd love to chat to listeners a little bit about why did you call your school Kairos, and what is it about that working with that aspect of time that is so intriguing and useful?
Right. Well, Kairos is an experience of time that is non-linear, that is about accessing the present moment, this present moment awareness. So it really, it's not chronological, it's the opposite in a way, or it's a completely different concept of time than the chronological time of Chronos, of Saturn, Saturnian time, which unfolds. It can also, chronological time can also be perceived as a cycle, or as a line. We tend to perceive it as a line, because Saturn still obviously moves in cycles, just like every other planet does. Mm-hmm. But Kairos is something else. Kairos is, it actually comes from a Greek god, Kairos, the god of the fleeting moment. And I never knew this until, I think I tell this story in the book, you might have read this, that I always just assumed that Kairos was a concept of time. Okay. Of course, in Greek mythology, every concept, every idea has a personification. So it's personified as this character, Kairos, who has a bald patch on the back of his head and a tuft of hair at the front. When he comes into your life, you have to grab him by that tuft and pull him into the moment. And if you wait a second too long, he's past you, you reach after him, and you can't grab him because he's bald on the back of his head. So you've got to pull into the moment. But really, Kairos is about carpe diem, seize the day, seize the moment, which is a wonderful Aries kind of lesson, really. It's like this, we only have this moment.
Yes.
Sometimes Aries, people who are strong in Aries or born under Aries live like that. They live as if there is only this moment. We've got to live it fully for now. And it's a great, it's a great way of accessing our presence in this moment.
Yeah. So let's spill the beans. John is in fact an Aries. I know you did say that a bit earlier, didn't you? Yeah. He's quite open about that, because that guy came up to you and said he could spot you. So is this how you live your life then? So you're typical.
When I am, I'm really on it. I feel that at the moment, actually, with the book coming out, it feels like a real Aries moment in my life. Yeah, and I'm in astrologically, I'm in an Aries part of my own cycle now.
Whoa, watch out, world, here he comes.
And I discovered astrology when I was in an Aries part of the cycle. I've returned 27 years on to a similar cycle that I was in when I actually discovered astrology, which is very interesting to me.
That whole Saturn returns thing.
Well, it's actually the progressed lunar return, my progressed moon, slightly technical thing here, but my progressed moon in Aries, as it was when I discovered astrology. So there's something for me, that this is a coming back to that original inspiration that I had. So
is it coming around the spiral of time? As we say, time's not linear. You sort of come around, you pick up on a similar theme, but you've developed it.
So there's a theme, but I can think, wow, in that time I've journeyed so far with this work, because I've been committed in my life, and since that time I committed to astrology very soon after that experience, and I knew that was going to be my path. So it's good to see it now where I am now and what I can offer now.
So this, but this is true, like for listeners and viewers, what is it that goes on in your life that you've noticed has cycles to it, and that if you trust your path, that you're doing what you're meant to be doing, your truth of your heart, you will be guided, and there will be times where you just have to let go and surrender, and it can be a bit frustrating. Yeah. Then there are other times where you urging forwards, and I think all of us are affected by the seasons. Of course we are. So as we step into the springtime now, this is not just going to be affecting Aries people, that's affecting everyone, isn't it?
That's right, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's a time where I think the spring equinox is a real moment to acknowledge. It's still the beginning of the new year in Iran, for example, the Persian calendar. Still based on the old astrological calendar from the old times. They still begin their year on the exact moment of the spring equinox when the sun enters Aries. So it's an interesting thing, and it will happen. It is whatever that moment is when that happens. That's when their new year is. Still an old astrological calendar in effect today. So there's something about this. That this is a new year. This is the original new year moment, the equinox, because it carries this spark of life.
Spark.
Well, it's the real medicine of Aries is to access your courage. The courage to just do it, the courage to just go for it, and not even think about the consequences. There are times in our lives when we need to do that. There are times when that can be problematic. We can be impulsive, of course. That's the shadow of Aries, is being over impulsive or, too quick. But there are times as well, if we can harness that fire within us, that we just need to act, so that we don't miss the opportunity that's in front of us.
You don't miss that little tuft of hair.
Yeah, the tuft of hair.
Or as I sometimes refer to, the orgasm of the moment. Make the most of that initial flavour of feeling and impetus. It's magical, isn't it? If you sit and cogitate and think about it for too long, it takes the energy away from it, and you want to ride on that chi of the moment into the whatever project you're starting. So is this so your book, let's just flash it again, let's do double flash. Whoa, this is so gorgeous. So Zodiac actually means wheel of animals, isn't it?
It does, yeah. Exactly.
I know that.
That's what it means, yeah.
That's cool. And
the animals carry, carrying wisdom for us, and that's recognized by placing animals in the sky. Why animals? But clearly we have this very, deep understanding with animals. It's sort of you can see this in the shamanic cultures, that their teachers are animals. And we remember this too. This is our own shamanic wheel. We remember that animals are our teachers too. They're not all animals. There's a couple of, we've got Aquarius, Libra, Gemini. They're human. Well, Aquarius and Gemini are human figures. Libra isn't a figure at all. Libra's balancing scales. It's the only one that's sort of non-animate in that way. but it's, but it is, yeah, primarily a cycle of animals. So that's very interesting.
It is, because a lot of us relate to animals. So find we don't need to, you can commune with animals more easily. They're honest, they're truthful, they're not going to manipulate with anything. They just are in the moment, and they just are in their presence. And you say we can learn so much from what they stand for us. So, we've got Aries here at the beginning. We're being born head first. It's all in this book. I love that, with head first. And so that Aries very much is about the head, about moving it all forwards. And as we go around the seasons, we get down to the rest of the body. But yeah, when the other thing that was coming up when I was reading the book, I've only read half of it because actually it's so flipping rich, people. You don't want to rush this one because there's some fantastic exercises in it, and also information you just want to settle with and let it percolate through. And as I said, you don't want to rush it. So that's why I kind of stopped halfway. But I was kind of noticing that as you were talking about it, that there's the masculine and feminine aspects of each of the symbols. And I thought that was great, because often we think of Aries as being the ram, the masculine energy, the fire. But then you said there's like Athena, the goddess, in a balanced sort of version of that. And I wonder if you could talk about that.
This is the clue, because Athena has the Aries, the 12 Greek gods and goddesses that sit on Olympus. Each one represents a different zodiac sign, and Athena has the Aries seat, and she's born from the head of Zeus, and that's the big clue that she's the Aries. She carries the Aries energy.
But it's more of a balanced version of it, would you suggest? Yeah,
it's more balanced. And there were some great Aries characters, female figures, who I often think of Boudica, the warrior, the warrior woman, the powerful feminine force. Yes. And one of the there's a story I tell in the book as well about it's a very ancient creation myth. Aries puts us in touch with our creation mythology, how things begin. And there are various stories that mirror this, but in this particular one, Eurynome, who's the original creation figure, and she dances on the waves of ocean. And from her dancing, this serpent is created, kind of is born, And they mate, and an egg is, this egg is produced, and the serpent wraps itself around the egg 7 times, and then out of the egg is born, life is born out of this egg. And Eurynome and Ophion sit on Mount Olympus, and he then sort of usurps her and claims that it was all him. He created it all, nothing to do with her at all. And he starts bragging about this. But her response is brilliant. She kicks him in the teeth and banishes him to the underworld in one stroke. And then human beings are born out of his fallen teeth. It's like, whoa, it's a powerful story. But it's like, but that usurping of feminine power is so prevalent, in that we can see it down in so many different cultural histories, that the originating feminine goddess power has been overthrown, has been diminished, has been banished. And I think that's a theme that goes through the book. I'm keen to reimagine some of these, particularly Virgo, some of these images, particularly Virgo, Scorpio, Aquarius. I do quite a reworking of these signs so that we can to reveal what's been lost, I think, within a patriarchal setup. So yeah, that's a theme, and I'm going to develop that in a future book as well.
Ooh, and you're going to come back again and talk about this at the summer solstice. But I'm glad that you mentioned the egg, because you were saying that the egg is a real symbol of the Aries energy, and of course it's this time of year, and then Easter eggs and that kind of thing. And there was a story that you had in the book about waiting for the egg to crack, and for it, if you wait too long, then the chick or the fetus dies, and at that one moment, sorry, I can't remember exactly, I'm sure you know exactly which one I'm talking about, but that the time is right. When the time is right for action, the egg cracks open and the birth occurs.
That takes a deep inner connection of the masculine part of us with the feminine part of us, a union, an alchemy of that part which needs to act, because Aries is anything but passive. It's very active. Yes. But at the same time, to be receptive enough to the creative force that is coming through, so that when we do act, we're actually acting in time with what wants to be born at that moment. So there's a synergy, there's a synchrony between the feminine life force and the masculine action that meets it. It's a real sort of Shiva Shakti union, and this is a real. So I think this is the deeper aspect of understanding this first sign of the wheel.
I think we should just all breathe with that for a moment. And that was lovely, absolutely, the depth of this work. Thank you. So moving from Aries into Taurus, now talking about the cusp time, the time that occurs between the signs, because you said once you're in a sign, you're in it, but the cusp times are real times of transition, of vulnerability, of tension, of
I think this is one of the unique things about this book. I've not really seen this done in any other book about the Zodiac, is that I really treat the cusps. The idea if these are 12 gateways, we need to be able to move from one to the next. I've written this as a narrative, so I spend quite a bit of time on the transition from Aries to Taurus, and it's like the irresistible force of Aries meets the immovable solidity and groundedness of Taurus. So this is a really fascinating meeting. It's like the pure spiritual power, if you like, the creative fire of Aries now has to ground itself and land itself in the body. It's like fire wants to materialize fully in earth. And it's interesting in the wheel that, because each time we have a fire sign, it's always followed by an earth sign. So it's showing us that fire wants to ground, spiritual fire wants to anchor and come fully into embodiment in the world.
That's it.
And Taurus slows us right down. It puts us in touch with our belly, with what we are taking into our body, the food that nourishes us. Taurus is about nourishment. It's about the good earth. It's about the soil. It's about the organic pace of life. A Taurian is happiest when there's a wonderful plate of food in front of them, or when their senses and their desires are being satisfied, in some way, whether that's through food, through good sex, through whatever it is that feeds the body. And that's an important part of our journey, right? We need to know that we're here, that we're in our bodies, that we can appreciate all the good stuff, all the good things that the earth gives us. So Taurus is a place of gratitude. If Aries sets our intention and gives us the impetus to begin, Taurus is a place where we can actually begin to relax into the gift that we're given. Aries is like the bud on the branch, breaking through on the branch. Taurus is like the blossom, the fourth gift of the year, of the astrological year.
Yeah.
This incredible, beautiful blossom, and we don't even seem to have had to work for it. It's just there.
Well, that's what I was going to mention again. You trust the seasons. You've planted your seed. And I like that in the book with the Aries, you plant your seed, you make your wish for the year. But then you trust that it's going to come, you've been nurturing it, it's got sun, it's got rain, and it comes through. And then you get into the fact that, it's happening. It's growing.
Something's happening already, and I haven't even got to the harvest yet.
No, the promise of it.
It's the promise of yes, you can trust this.
Yes.
And Taurus is a lot about, you can just trust where you are right now. And that where you are right now is enough, and what you have right now is enough. That's the real medicine of Taurus, because we always want things to be different. We want more. We want things to change. We bemoan what we have, or whenever we're in that, this is the time to just drop in and go, what if everything is just as it should be right now?
Such a relief, that, isn't it? When and to give gratitude. I mean, gratitude's the big energy to work with. I mean, anyone listening, watching this knows that, you know, you write your gratitude list. And I like the word appreciation around gratitude, because it does mean thanks, but it also means there's an expansion within that energy, which is certainly
you appreciates, right? That's the idea that, you know,
exactly.
if you appreciate something, it grows in you, it grows around you, because you're acknowledging, recognizing it. You know, you ask any of the teachers, the manifestation teachers, they'll all tell you gratitude is key to manifesting what you want in your life.
It really is. It really is. And so getting back to Taurus being about, you know, food, nourishment, abundance, it's also like the energy of health, and health being your wealth.
Yeah, your wealth, exactly, yeah. And the word wealth, I love the word wealth. It's completely twisted in where we understand it now. It was never meant to be an amount. Wealth was never meant to be something that represented an amount. It was a way of being. It comes from the word wheel, which I love, the W-E-A-L, the Anglo-Saxon word, which meant well-being. It meant the wheel of well-being. You know, so our whole idea of wealth is that we are in a dynamic condition of well-being, and that we are feeding ourselves, and that we're being fed. And from that place of well-being, we can grow, and we can find, and we can, but the wealth is already here. That's what Taurus teaches us. It's already here. You know, we're given this garden to live in on this planet, on this beautiful earth. And just, you know, if we can just appreciate that.
Simple. The simple stuff, isn't it? Get out into nature, appreciate it. Your health is your wealth, and that money comes at you because it's a currency, it's a unit, it's a conduit of exchange. It's nothing to get frantic about, or, you know, I think that's part of the problem, is that we worry too much about it, and that kind of puts a stop on it. But if you can get out into your garden and just like notice, or even outside if you haven't got a garden, just be in nature and just notice the abundance that's already there, and you're part of nature. So therefore you have this natural ability to feel and be abundant. Yeah. And that's the Taurian medicine, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
So as we move from Taurus to Gemini, so we're going from earth into air, what's that transition like?
Well, air always follows earth in the wheel. So, you know, this stops us getting too settled in the stuff, in the material stuff. I always imagine Taurus is the blossom on the trees. Gemini are the winds that blow that blossom off. It's like, and those winds bring with them the pollinators, the bees, the butterflies. But the apparent stability of this blossom only lasts so long, because it's getting blown. But it's attractive. Taurus is ruled by Venus. It's attractive, so it attracts the pollinators who are going to spread the seeds of life around. So Gemini is about the spreading of the seeds. You know, Geminis are in the air. They're lively. They're always in flux, in change. They are communicating with us. They're dancing with what's here and now. They're bringing the news. You know, they're bringing ideas. They're bringing things from over here with the wind. They're bringing it over there. So they're mixing it all up. So what belongs, you know, in Taurus, we've established a kind of a sense of ownership. I think this is mine, you know, this belongs to me, right? I have this. You know, in the developmental cycle, we've gone from the newborn Aries, where it's everything is now, and there's no sense of any separation from that, to Taurus, where you realize that you're separate from the stuff of the world, and so you go, well, I'm going to have that. That's mine. That's mine. That's mine. That's one way of looking at this. And then in Gemini, we get inspired with language. We start to speak. We're finding words, and we're going, well, we're giving things names, and information is coming to us about what things are called and how we communicate. And we begin as well, at the same time as we find language, we also learn to be creative with language. We start to substitute words for things. So a thing becomes the name of the thing. And that gives us much more freedom to be able to trade and exchange, both, you know, trading like in business, but also trading ideas. We start to get clever with language. We learn to lie. We learn to be creative. We learn to invent. So all kinds of things are happening in Gemini. And it's a very lively place. But it's light. It's light on its feet. It's light, you know, it's quick. You can't quite, it's inconsistent often as an energy because it needs to be, because it can't get like into too much of a routine because it needs to keep moving. But it also, the real magic of Gemini is the realization that we are creating our reality through what we think, the way we think and what we say. I say in the book, your word is your bond with the universe, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And this is a part of all those intention works that if we do gratitude work, we also do intention work. And it's not enough to think it. We need to say it.
We need to articulate it, don't we?
You do. And if you bring a movement in with that as well, then that you embody that expression so that you use all of the elements.
So look where we've gone from intention, from the seed of intention in Aries to the gratitude of Taurus to the articulation in Gemini. We start to give it voice. Gemini is where we give. Gemini rules the lungs. It's how we bring breath and voice to our intention.
Yeah, because we said earlier that Aries is the head, so Taurus is the throat and neck. Yeah. And now we're into the.
Think of the bull. You know, the big.
Oh, the big
bull.
Strong. Yeah.
Which in
the yoke. Yeah.
Well, often has a necklace of flowers around.
Oh, okay.
In mythology, you find this. That's always around the neck.
Yeah.
But then you're into the nervous system. Gemini rules the nervous energy. It rules our gesticulate. It rules our shoulders, our arms, our hands, our fingers. So language originates as gesture.
Ah, I like that. An expression, yes.
Expression.
Through movement.
I had my hands behind my back. I wouldn't know what to say. You'll notice I throw my hands around a lot. Because for me, that's where language originates. It's like I need to be able to. This somehow is a way of communicating.
Is it sound and movement? But you do this. You're into astro, drama, and theatre and music, aren't you? So this is part of how you express.
Well, for me, astrology has always been how do we express these energies? How do we express these archetypes? How do we enact them? How do we bring them into our field? Let's not just talk about them. Let's speak as if they are present. You know, let's imagine that they're actually in our midst. So let's talk with a certain respect of that, but also to realize that these are powerful forces that we can conjure our lives with. You know, that we can work with these energies to create. You know, it's a very creative place, the Gemini place.
So have we got something that we could share with people right now that we could do, sort of a gesture and movement? I don't know. I'm just winging it here.
What have you got in mind?
Or is it just to remind people to use their hands and their whole body when they're speaking, and not to be embarrassed about that?
Exactly, but also to be really mindful of the things that we're saying. You know, so much of our language is lost in what I call loose talk and gossip. Think about how much of what when you're going through your day, you're talking about what's happening. You're talking about people's lives. You're talking about things as if there's nothing we can do about it. You know, it's almost like it, and we forget all the time that our words are creating our reality. So if we're continually complaining about something, we're compounding that situation because our creativity is going into compounding that. But if we start to loosen up and realize, well, what if I changed my language? So what we could suggest here is that think about a thing that you say all the time, like a cliche that you say, or something that you say over and over again. Maybe you have a particular story about a person or somebody at work or someone you're in a relationship with or some situation that you're in. Just notice what happens if you start to change your language. Say something different, create a new idea. Even if you don't necessarily believe it at first, the more you start to speak it into being, the more it becomes a reality.
I completely agree. I'm going to share a short story with you about how I was bringing my son up, and he would he would say something that was negative about himself, and I say to him, "Oh, quickly say the opposite," you know. And he's got it now as one of his patterns. So now he's in his 20s, and if we travel along and he'll be saying something, he'll be dissing himself, you know. I'm going, "Hang on a minute." He goes, "Yeah, I know, I need to say the opposite, don't I?" So, you know, we can notice, we can pick up. I think it is important to express things that are difficult, of course, but like you say, when they keep coming around as a pattern, then you kind of, you know, do you actually want this? Do you want to perpetuate this one, or do you want to notice it, be compassionate towards it, and go, what would I prefer? What would I like to invite in?
And I agree with you. I think it's sometimes it's necessary to, you know, we need to be able to say what's there. We need to be able to express our grief, our feelings of loss, our things when things are not right, but also to observe. As long as we remain observant that we're doing that, as long as we don't get caught up that is how it is, that's when we get stuck. So if we can cultivate the watcher, the listener, the observer, you know, who actually, and remember that these are things are happening, ideas are coming, and we are noticing them. You know, that's good Gemini medicine too.
Well, also that idea of having like a dual observations thing, so Gemini being the twins most famously, is that part of the duality of Gemini, or the duality of Gemini within us, that the observer and the expressor?
There's a divine twin and there's a mortal twin, you know, just like there's the mortal part above and there's our higher self, or that part that is in spirit. And Gemini, you know, people who are strong in Gemini are more in touch with that. I always, you know, you can see when you meet a Gemini, there's a twinkle in their eye. There's a sort of, I always think of Peter Pan and Tinkerbell, you know, it's like there's that twinkly energy around. And you see it, you often see it sparkling in the eyes of a Gemini, because they're alive with, and they're more in touch with that. But we can all be in touch with that. You know, we all have that. It doesn't matter what sign we are. We all have that capacity to connect with that non-material, more than human part of us.
Mm-hmm.
And the more we can communicate and become a channel for what, because that being knows a whole load of different stuff than we do. And if we can bring some of that through, you know, we're reconnecting those two parts of us. It's like we all have a twin in spirit somewhere. Yeah, for sure. This is fascinating stuff, John. I'm so glad that you've agreed to come back and continue this conversation. I will just run by anyone that's got their birth chart handy. I mean, this is quite useful to be looking at that when you've got your copy of your Zodiac soul. Although, as you say, we all have aspects of all of it within us. And my question for you is that I don't seem to have any planets in any of those three. Oh no, I've got Venus and Gemini, but I haven't got any planets in Pisces or Aries or Taurus. What does that mean? Well, you still have access to those energies.
Thank goodness for that.
they'll still come out on a house cusp in your chart, so you still have a way of experiencing them. But you know, this is what I've put forward in the book is a 12 gateways to wholeness. That the idea that we carry all 12 of these energies, regardless of how that's laid out in our birth chart. Correct. Now, if we're strong in a particular sign, then that one's going to predominate in our character and our personality.
Okay.
And we can, you know, and it's a resource for us. We might have a sign that's particularly challenging for us. It might be one where we're really challenged, and that's one we have to work hard on. But the ones where we don't have any signs are often the ones, we don't have any planets, are often the ones where we can learn the most, you know, because we still need to integrate that energy. You know, it doesn't matter if you're in Aries or not, you still need to initiate things, you still need to feel the passion and the fire in your belly. Absolutely. So, you know, and you might find that through, I mean, you're a Leo, right? So,
well spotted.
So that also carries the fire.
Yeah.
But it doesn't carry the initiating fire of Aries. There's only Aries is the fire. Aries is the fire starter.
Twisted fire starter. No, sorry.
That would have been a good quote.
That would have been, yeah.
So that's Aries is the fire starter, and that's the and so, you know, that's why I've laid this out in the way I have, so that, you know, you can look at where you're strong or weak in a particular energy, but you can also look at how you can call that into your life.
Yes. The medicine of it all.
Just to say, I've got a website, yourzodiacsoul.com, and on that website you can download a free PDF document with interpretations of each planet's position in each sign. And there's a scoring system in there where you can score yourself in each sign of the zodiac to see which are the ones that are strongest naturally for you. But there's also like a handy guide to be able just to get a little interpretation of each position. So as you're reading each chapter, you can go to the chapters in this document and just look at what your relationship is to each sign.
Great.
So it's that's just to say that, yeah. And it does
absolutely. I was going to say, how can people find out more? And you've just done it.
Yeah.
What was that? Your zodiacsoul.com.
Yourzodiacsoul.com.
But your other website is
kairosastrology.co.uk.
Okay, good. So look, come chat again around the solstice, and I want to talk about the whole Glastonbury zodiac as well with you, and obviously what happens at the equinox. Sorry, the solstices and equinoxes too. But utterly fascinating, John. Thank you so much for your time. Is there any particular thing that you would just like to leave people with as a last thought before we introduce the track that you want to play?
Just remember that you are whole. Remember that you come into this world as a whole being. The essence of this work is 12 gateways to wholeness. 12 gateways to remember your wholeness, to remember that you're already whole, that you already have everything you need in this extraordinary being that you are.
So breathe that one in, people. You already have everything that you need. How does that make you feel? Lovely. Thank you.
Pleasure.
And what track have you chosen, John? What would you like to play people at the end of all of this?
If you've got it, I'd like Circle Round by Carl Murray.
And why have you chosen that then?
I only heard this track recently, but it really spoke to me, and it has this great line in it: "We are warmed by the fire as a beacon in this time. We are born as a flame of hope that never dies." And I just thought that was so perfect, as we come into this moment of the year. And it also speaks with the elders, that we've been around the wheel many times, that we've travelled this soul's path many times too.
I'm so glad you brought the ancestors in, because they're really important to all of this work, and I know that we're going to enjoy talking again in the future. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us today, and indeed for this brilliant new book. Really get it, people. It's out. By the time this video's out, it'll be available. So absolutely, congratulations, John. Keep your chi up, my friend, and we'll see you really soon.
Real pleasure. Thank you.
Bye.
Heartbeat here, call the wildfires home, circle round in a beacon from the places that you roam. No more time to be burning out there on your own. Now the flames are joined as one, and we can let it be known that we warm by the fire as a beacon in this time. We